I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these posts. You always think, not me, not my marriage, not my wife. But life has a way of laughing at your certainty. My name is Matt, and for 10 years, I was married to Olivia. We had what I thought was a good life, comfortable, predictable, safe. We met in college, survived the post-grad struggle together, and built our careers side by side. She was my best friend, my partner in everything. And then, suddenly, she wasn't. It started after a weekend camping trip. Olivia had gone with a group from her office, a mix of coworkers and friends. I didn't think much of it at first. She had always been independent, and I trusted her. But when she came back, something was off. She was distant. Not the kind where someone just needs space, but the kind where you feel like you're talking to a stranger. She wasn't cruel, wasn't outright mean, just absent. Conversations became one-word answers. Sex disappeared overnight. At first, I blamed stress. Work had been demanding for both of us. I figured she just needed time to decompress. But then, small things started piling up. She was on her phone constantly, always tilting the screen away from me. She started going out more, saying she was with coworkers. And she smelled different, not like perfume, but like someone else. I ignored it for weeks. Maybe even months. I told myself I was imagining things. That she was just going through a phase. Then, one night, I found the first real sign that something was wrong. She had gone out again, claiming it was just a girls' night. I was putting away laundry when I noticed a pair of her underwear stuffed at the bottom of the hamper, different from the rest. There were stains. And that was the moment something inside me cracked. I wanted to believe in coincidences. I wanted to trust her. But my gut was screaming at me. I had to find out the truth. I stood there, holding the evidence in my hands, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to break free from my chest. My mind raced through every possible explanation, each one more ridiculous than the last. Maybe it was just a weird stain. Maybe she had an accident. Maybe. No. I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly what I was looking at. And worse, I knew what it meant. I dropped the underwear back into the hamper like it had burned me, my stomach twisting. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. I hovered over Olivia's contact for a second before locking the screen. Calling her wouldn't help. She'd just lie. That's what cheaters do. They lie, gaslight, and make you feel like you're the crazy one. I needed proof. I spent the next hour pacing the house, trying to calm the storm in my head. Every moment of the last few months replayed in my mind, the way she barely kissed me anymore, the late nights, the way she turned her phone screen away when I walked by. I had ignored the signs because I didn't want to believe them. But now, I couldn't ignore it anymore. By the time Olivia got home, I had convinced myself to act normal. I needed to know how deep this went before I confronted her. I needed to be smart. She walked in smelling like a mix of expensive perfume and something else, something musky, almost familiar, but not quite right. Her hair was slightly messy, and her lipstick was faded. "Hey," she said casually, tossing her purse onto the counter. "What are you doing up?" I forced a smile, pretending to scroll on my phone. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, not really caring. She didn't even meet my eyes. I watched her as she walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I checked my phone. 1:12 a.m. She had told me she was just out with the girls. A girls' night that ended after 1 a.m., coming home looking like she'd been thoroughly fucked. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to breathe. This wasn't a hunch anymore. This was real. I had to find out the truth. Step 1, the phone. I had never checked Olivia's phone before. We weren't that couple. We trusted each other, or at least, I had trusted her. But trust was dead now. Her purse was right there on the counter. I could grab it, check her messages, and finally get the answers I needed. Except, her phone wasn't in her purse. Shit. She had taken it into the bathroom with her. She never did that before. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling under my skin. She was being careful. That meant this wasn't just a drunken mistake. It was calculated. Repeated. When she finally came out, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, she barely acknowledged me. "I'm exhausted," she murmured, heading straight to bed. I sat there, watching her, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. She fell asleep almost instantly. I didn't. I spent the entire night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing my marriage had just changed forever. And in the morning, I was going to find out exactly who she had changed it for. Morning came, but I felt like I hadn't slept at all. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Olivia breathe beside me. She looked peaceful, like she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, my insides were twisted into knots. I turned my head slightly, watching her. Had she always been this good at lying? At pretending? Or had I just been too blind, too trusting to see it? I needed answers. And I was done waiting for them to fall into my lap. Step 2, checking her routine. Olivia always kept her phone close, but there were moments when she let her guard down. One of those moments was when she showered in the morning. She liked to play music while she got ready, meaning her phone would be sitting out, unlocked, for at least a few minutes. I waited. She got up groggily, stretched, and grabbed some clothes. "I have a long day," she mumbled. "Oh yeah?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Big project?" She hesitated. "Yeah. Meetings all day." Lie. I knew when she was telling the truth, and that wasn't it. She disappeared into the bathroom, and within seconds, music started playing through her Bluetooth speaker. This was it. I moved fast. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen still lit up. I grabbed it, heart pounding. Locked. Damn it. She had never used a password before. But now. Now she had Face ID enabled. That confirmed everything. She was hiding something. I clenched my jaw, putting the phone back exactly as it was before she noticed anything. Fine. If I couldn't get into her phone, I'd find another way. Step 3, checking the details. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed my own phone, opening our shared cell phone plan account. Olivia probably thought she was covering her tracks, but there were always breadcrumbs. I scrolled through the call logs. One number stood out immediately. Repeated calls, some lasting over an hour. Others short, back-to-back, like someone trying to reach her desperately. No name attached. Just a number. I copied it and ran a quick search. Nothing. A burner phone, maybe. Or someone just not listed publicly. Either way, it was suspicious as hell. Then I checked her messages. I couldn't see the contents, but I could see the frequency. Dozens of texts a day. More at night. Not a coworker. Not a friend. This was someone she was obsessed with. I felt sick. Step 4, following her lies. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not without more. Not until I knew everything. So I played dumb. I kissed her goodbye like always. I watched her grab her bag, flash me that same familiar smile, the smile I used to believe in, and walk out the door like nothing was wrong. Then I grabbed my keys. I was going to find out where she really went. I waited exactly 5 minutes after Olivia left before grabbing my keys and heading out. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, I felt like I was coming apart. I wasn't just a husband following his wife, I was a detective trailing a suspect. And the worst part? I already knew what I was going to find. I kept my distance as I followed her car through town. She was cautious, not paranoid, but deliberate. She didn't take her usual route to work. Instead, she took a detour, turning onto a quieter road leading toward the outskirts of the city. My stomach clenched. This wasn't a work meeting. She drove into a neighborhood I didn't recognize, eventually pulling into the driveway of a modest house. Not some random hotel or a distant part of town. A house. That meant this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was a routine. I pulled over a block away, watching from a distance. Olivia stepped out of the car, smoothing her dress, fixing her hair. She checked her reflection in the window before heading toward the front door. And then it opened. A man stood there, grinning as he let her inside. He was younger than me, maybe early 30s, tall, athletic build. I had never seen him before, but the way she looked at him told me everything. She touched his arm as she stepped inside. He leaned in, kissed her neck. She didn't pull away. The door closed. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The reality of it hit me like a truck. I had just watched my wife walk into another man's house. Willingly. Happily. I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door, my heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to storm in, demand an explanation, force her to look me in the eye and admit it. But I wasn't going to let emotions take over. I needed more than anger. I needed proof. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my phone and snapped a few pictures of her car in the driveway. The address. The man's face when he had opened the door. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them yet, but I knew one thing: this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stayed parked for over an hour, waiting. Imagining what was happening inside that house. The betrayal. The lies. Finally, Olivia emerged. Her hair was messy. Her dress was slightly wrinkled. She looked satisfied. And that's when it truly hit me. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. My wife was cheating on me. And I was going to make damn sure she paid for it. Watched Olivia walk back to her car, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sitting just a block away, watching her every move. She slid into the driver's seat, checked herself in the mirror, and smoothed out her hair like she hadn't just spent the last hour screwing another man. I gritted my teeth, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. She didn't even hesitate before pulling out of the driveway. No guilt, no second thoughts, just business as usual. As if she had done this 100 times before. I waited until she was out of sight before stepping out of my car. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was razor-sharp now. I wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. I was a man on a mission. I walked up to the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed more than just a blurry photo of a man opening a door. I needed details. I needed a name. There were no cars in the driveway anymore. Just a small house, neat yard, a mailbox by the curb. I glanced around, no one was watching. Then I stepped up and checked the name on the mailbox. Aaron Carter. I let that name sink in, burning it into my memory. I didn't recognize it. He wasn't a coworker, at least not one she had ever mentioned. Which meant this wasn't just an office affair. This was something deeper. Something she had been hiding from me for a while. I snapped a picture of the mailbox, then turned and walked back to my car. I had what I needed for now. But this was just the beginning. By the time I got home, Olivia was already there, acting like everything was fine. She stood in the kitchen, casually sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just stepped out of another man's bed. I stared at her, my stomach churning. "Hey," she said, glancing up. "You feeling okay? You look off." I forced a smile. "Didn't sleep well." She nodded, unconcerned. Maybe take a nap. I'm gonna hop on a call soon. A call. Right. Maybe with Aaron. Maybe setting up their next meeting. I swallowed down the fury bubbling in my chest. I couldn't let her know what I knew. Not yet. I think I'll do that, I said, keeping my voice even. Then I walked into our bedroom, shut the door, and pulled out my phone. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I needed more. So I made a call. To a private investigator. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't from shock, it was from determination. Then, a voice answered. Dawson Investigations. I took a deep breath. Yeah, I need to hire someone for a surveillance job. There was a pause. Are we talking about a spouse? I hesitated, gripping my knee. Yeah. The man on the other end didn't sound surprised. Got it. Can you come in today? It's better to talk in person. I glanced at the bedroom door, making sure Olivia was still in the kitchen. Yeah. I'll be there in an hour. The office was tucked into a quiet strip mall, nothing fancy, just a simple sign that read Dawson Investigations. I walked in, and a middle-aged guy with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude greeted me. You Matt? He asked, standing from his desk. Yeah, I said, shaking his hand. Have a seat. He gestured to the chair across from him. I sat down, rubbing my hands together. I wasn't sure how this worked, how people did this. I had never imagined myself sitting in a private investigator's office, talking about my wife. Dawson pulled out a notepad. All right, give me the basics. Name, suspected affair partner, locations, time frames. I exhaled slowly, then started. Her name's Olivia Carter. She's been distant for a while, but I followed her today. She went to a house, spent about an hour inside, then left. I got the guy's name from the mailbox, Aaron Carter. Dawson raised an eyebrow. Carter? Same last name. I hadn't even considered that. Yeah. Maybe a coincidence. Maybe, he said, scribbling something down. Or maybe it's family. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't thought of that either. A cousin? A distant relative? That would be worse, somehow. Do you want just photographic evidence, or are you looking for more, texts, phone records, background on the guy? I swallowed. Everything. I want everything. Dawson nodded. All right. I'll tail her for the next week. If she's doing what you think she's doing, I'll get you proof. He slid a contract across the desk. I barely skimmed it before signing. This wasn't about money. This was about knowing the truth. As I handed the paperwork back, Dawson looked me in the eye. Just a warning, he said. You think you know what you're about to find out, but most guys aren't ready for the reality. You sure you want to do this? I clenched my jaw. I need to. He nodded. Then I'll be in touch. I walked out of that office feeling heavier than I had when I walked in. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was real. And soon, I was going to have undeniable proof. I just wasn't sure if I was ready to see it. The worst part wasn't the suspicion. It wasn't even the certainty. It was the waiting. Dawson had told me he'd need at least a week to get solid proof. That meant 7 days of pretending everything was normal. 7 days of lying next to Olivia in bed, watching her scroll through her phone, knowing she was probably texting him. 7 days of forcing smiles, making small talk, and swallowing the bile that rose every time she kissed me goodnight. I didn't know how people did this. How they stayed sane, knowing the person they loved was betraying them right in front of their eyes. By day 3, I was unraveling. It started small. I began paying closer attention to Olivia's habits, noticing things I'd ignored before. How she'd go to bed earlier but stay up on her phone for hours. How she'd forget to charge it at night but always had a full battery in the morning. How she'd leave the room to take certain calls, lowering her voice like she didn't want me to hear. I wanted to grab the phone out of her hands, scroll through her messages, and see the lies for myself. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because if I confronted her now, before I had the evidence, she'd just deny everything. Twist the truth. Maybe even turn it back on me. That's what cheaters did. So instead, I played along. On the surface, I was the same husband I had always been. I kissed her goodbye in the morning. I texted her during the day, making sure not to seem too different. I even asked about work, pretending to care as she fed me half-truths and excuses. But inside, I was a volcano, waiting to erupt. On day 5, Dawson texted me. Got something. You free to meet? My stomach dropped. Yeah. Where? He sent me an address, a coffee shop across town. 15 minutes later, I was sitting across from him, my hands clenched into fists under the table. He slid a manila envelope toward me. Photos, he said. Videos too, if you want to see them later. No doubt about it, man. She's cheating. I swallowed hard, staring at the envelope like it was a loaded gun. Same guy? I asked, my voice tight. Dawson nodded. Aaron Carter. I ran a background check. He's not related to her. Just shares the last name. Works in finance, single, lives alone. And based on what I've seen, he's been seeing your wife for a while. I sucked in a sharp breath, my fingers tightening around the edge of the table. How long? At least 6 months, he said. Maybe longer. 6 months. Half a year. While I had been cooking her dinner, rubbing her feet after long days, planning weekend trips to reconnect, she had been sneaking off to this guy's house. Lying to my face. Sleeping next to me after F***ing him. I could feel my pulse hammering in my temples. Dawson hesitated, then said, "There's more." I forced myself to look up. What? He sighed. She's not just seeing him. My stomach bottomed out. What do you mean? I mean, she's been meeting up with another guy too. Not as often, but enough that it's not a one-time thing. He slid another picture toward me. A different man. Blonde, mid-40s, wearing a suit. She met him at a hotel last week, Dawson said. Different location than Carter's house. I checked him out, his name's Sean Porter. Married. Got a wife and kids. High up in some corporate firm. My guess? They're colleagues, maybe even a boss employee thing. I felt like I was going to be sick. It wasn't just one affair. It was multiple. Olivia wasn't just cheating, she was living a whole other life. I sat there, staring at the evidence, my hands shaking. The anger inside me was boiling over, clawing at my insides, demanding I do something. But I didn't even know where to start. Dawson leaned forward. I know this is a lot. But you need to decide what you want to do next. I forced down the bile in my throat and looked him in the eye. I want everything, I said. Every meeting. Every text. Every lie. Because if Olivia thought she was going to get away with this, she was dead wrong. I drove home in a fog, my mind replaying the images Dawson had given me. Olivia with Aaron. Olivia in a hotel room with another man. The lies, the secrecy, the sheer audacity of it all. 6 months, probably longer. I had been living a fantasy while my wife had been playing house with multiple men behind my back. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. My jaw ached from clenching it so hard. My pulse pounded in my ears. How the f*ck had I let it get this far? I had always prided myself on being observant, on knowing my wife, my marriage, my life. But I had been so blind, so trusting, that I had let her make a fool of me. I looked at our house, the place we had built together, the place I had poured my heart and soul into, and suddenly, it felt like a stranger's home. A crime scene, a place where lies had been whispered in the dark while I slept like a fool. I wanted to go inside and confront her. To shove the pictures in her face and watch her scramble for excuses. To see her expression when she realized she couldn't gaslight her way out of this. But not yet. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. I had the proof now. Dawson was still tracking her, gathering more. I wasn't going to let anger make me stupid. No, I was going to make this hurt. Step 1, locking down the finances. Before going inside, I pulled out my phone and logged into our joint bank account. Olivia didn't know it, but I had always been the one in control of our finances. She had a credit card I paid off every month, and I had access to all our accounts. In less than 5 minutes, I froze our joint card and transferred every single cent into an account under my name only. She wanted to play games. Fine. Let's see how she liked paying for them on her own. Step 2, changing the locks. Olivia didn't know it, but I had installed a smart lock months ago when she lost her keys for the 3rd time. It had a manual override, and I could change the access codes remotely. I opened the app and reset it. She could still leave. She just wouldn't be able to get back in without me letting her. Step 3, gathering my own evidence. Before walking in, I turned on my phone's voice recorder and slipped it into my pocket. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me when this conversation finally happened. I wanted her reaction on record. I wanted proof of whatever bullshit excuses she was going to throw at me. I finally walked inside, my face carefully blank. Olivia was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, sipping coffee like she hadn't spent the afternoon screwing another man. She glanced up. "Hey, babe. Where've you been?" I forced a small smile. "Just out running errands." She nodded, unconcerned. "I was thinking of ordering sushi for dinner. You in the mood for it?" My stomach churned. The casualness of it all. The ease with which she spoke to me, like she hadn't destroyed our marriage. But I just nodded. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "Sushi sounds good." Because she didn't know it yet. But this was the last normal night she'd ever have. I sat across from Olivia at the dinner table, watching as she scrolled through her phone between bites of sushi. She looked so at ease, so comfortable in the life she had built on lies. It made my stomach turn. I forced myself to eat, though every bite felt like swallowing stones. My mind wasn't on the food, it was on the steps I still needed to take. The locks were changed. The finances were secured. The evidence was piling up. Now, it was just a matter of when I would pull the rug out from under her. But I needed to time it right. I studied her as she took a sip of wine, completely unaware of what was coming. "Long day at work?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She nodded, setting her glass down. "Yeah. So many meetings. Lies." I knew exactly where she had been. Still, I played along. "Anything interesting happen?" She shook her head. "Just the usual." I nodded, pretending to be absorbed in my food while my heart pounded. The anger inside me was rising again, but I swallowed it down. "Not yet." Instead, I casually leaned back. "By the way, I was thinking, we haven't gone on a trip in a while. Maybe we should plan something." Her eyes flickered with something, hesitation, maybe. Or guilt. "A trip?" she repeated. "Yeah," I said, watching her reaction closely. "Just the two of us. Get away for a bit." She smiled, but it wasn't as quick as it used to be. That sounds nice, she said, forcing enthusiasm. I could see right through her. She was already thinking of excuses. Already calculating how to balance her double life. I let the conversation drift to other things, letting her think she was still in control. Letting her believe I was the same clueless husband I had been for months. But inside, I was counting down the minutes. After dinner, Olivia went to shower, as she always did. I watched her disappear into the bathroom, phone clutched tightly in her hand. She never left it unattended anymore. Which meant I needed a different approach. I went to my office, closed the door, and called Dawson. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah. It's time, I said. He knew exactly what I meant. I've got everything you need, he said. You want me to send it over? Yes. And I need a recommendation for a lawyer. Dawson didn't hesitate. I've got a guy. He's handled cases like this before, divorce, asset protection, everything. I'll text you his info. Good, I said. I'll set up a meeting first thing tomorrow. There was a pause. Then Dawson said, You holding up okay? I exhaled slowly. I just want this over with. I get it, he said. Just be smart. Don't let emotions push you into doing something rash. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I won't. When I hung up, I checked my email. Dawson had already sent over the files, photos, timestamps, even a short video. I opened one of the pictures. Olivia, standing outside Aaron's house, smiling as he pulled her in for a kiss. A familiar, intimate smile. A smile that used to be mine. I clenched my jaw and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, I woke up before Olivia. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything that was about to happen. Today wasn't just another day. Today was the beginning of the end. I quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake her, and went to the kitchen. I brewed a cup of coffee, letting the motions ground me. My hands were steady now, no more shaking, no more hesitation. I had everything I needed. Now, it was time to act. Step 1, the lawyer. I had called Dawson's recommendation first thing after waking up. The lawyer, Richard Calloway, had been expecting my call. Apparently, Dawson had already filled him in on my situation. Come in at 10, he had said. We'll go over everything. I glanced at the clock. 8:30 a.m. Olivia was still asleep. Good. That gave me time to prepare. I gathered all the evidence, Dawson's reports, the photos, the financial records I had pulled the night before. I printed everything out, putting it in a neat folder. There was no turning back now. By the time I walked into Calloway's office, I felt more in control than I had in months. The lawyer was a sharp-looking man in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from years of experience. He glanced at the folder in my hands and nodded. Let's get started. I laid everything out on his desk. He flipped through the photos first, his expression unreadable. Then he moved on to the financials. After a few minutes of silence, he finally looked up. You've done your homework, he said. I wanted to be prepared. He nodded. Smart. Now, let's talk options. He outlined everything clearly, how the divorce process would go, how we could protect my assets, and what strategies we could use depending on how Olivia reacted. You've already locked down the finances, which is good, he said. But there's one more thing you should consider, where are you planning to stay during all of this? I hesitated. I hadn't thought about that. Calloway leaned back in his chair. If she fights this, things could get ugly fast. You've already changed the locks, but are you prepared for what happens when she realizes she's lost control? Some people don't take betrayal well, even when they're the ones doing the betraying. I exhaled slowly. I haven't figured that part out yet. Do you have family nearby? My brother, I said. I could stay with him if I need to. Calloway nodded. Might be a good idea. Either way, you should be the one to leave first, on your terms. That way, she doesn't get a chance to spin it against you. I took that in, letting it settle. This wasn't just about getting the truth out. It was about winning. Because Olivia wasn't going to make this easy. And I needed to be ready for that. I left Calloway's office with a clear plan. Everything was in place, the legal strategy, the financial protection, even my exit strategy. Now, it was just a matter of execution. As I drove home, I kept replaying his words in my head. Some people don't take betrayal well, even when they're the ones doing the betraying. I wasn't sure how Olivia would react when I confronted her, but I knew one thing, she wouldn't see it coming. By the time I walked through the front door, she was already up, sipping coffee at the kitchen counter. She looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey," she said. "Where'd you go so early?" I kept my expression neutral. "Just had some errands to run." She nodded, completely unaware that I had just spent the morning setting up the end of our marriage. She was dressed for work, black slacks, a light blue blouse, hair curled just enough to look effortless. The same routine she had probably followed on the days she met up with Aaron or Sean. I watched her for a moment, wondering how someone could lie so easily, so effortlessly. If she noticed my stare, she didn't show it. Instead, she grabbed her phone and started typing, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. I already knew who she was texting. And I already knew that by tonight, everything would change. I forced a smile. "Big day at work?" She nodded. "Meetings all morning. Then I might grab drinks with some coworkers later." Another lie. I already knew she wasn't going to be in the office all morning. Dawson had sent me her itinerary for the day, lunch with Aaron at his house, a late afternoon hotel meetup with Sean. 2 men, 1 day. I tightened my grip on my coffee mug, but my face remained calm. "Sounds fun," I said casually. She shrugged. "Yeah, nothing special." Then she glanced at the time and sighed. "I should get going." She walked over, leaned in, and kissed my cheek. The same way she always did. And for the first time, it disgusted me. "See you tonight," she said. I nodded, watching her walk out the door. The second she was gone, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Dawson. "Follow her. I want everything documented." A minute later, he responded. "Already on it." I took a deep breath, setting my phone down. This was it. The last normal morning before everything fell apart. By the time Olivia walked through that door tonight, she wouldn't have a clue what was waiting for her. The hours dragged by, each minute thick with anticipation. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't doubting myself. I had moved past all of that. Now, I was just waiting. While Olivia spent her day wrapped up in her affairs, I spent mine making final preparations. I packed a small bag, just the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my important documents. Calloway had been right. It was better if I was the one to leave first. That way, I controlled the narrative. After that, I made one last call. "Matt," Dawson answered. "I was about to check in with you." "Tell me," I said, leaning against the counter. She went straight to Aaron's place after leaving home. Spent about 2 hours there. He paused. "And then she went to the hotel." "With Sean?" "Yep." I felt nothing. No shock, no pain. Just cold certainty. "Got everything on camera?" I asked. "Everything," he confirmed. "Photos, timestamps, even some video. She's got no way out of this." "Good." I exhaled slowly. Send me everything. Already on its way, he said. Then he hesitated. You sure you want to confront her tonight? Yes. My voice was firm. It ends today. By the time evening rolled around, the house felt different. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like I was standing in the ruins of something that had already been destroyed. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the dining table, waiting. My phone buzzed. The files from Dawson had come through, photos, videos, everything I needed. I didn't even need to open them. I knew what was in them. And in just a little while, so would Olivia. At 7:12 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. Showtime. The door opened, and she walked in, her expression the same as always. Casual. Relaxed. The face of a woman who thought she had everyone fooled. She set her purse down and smiled. Hey, babe. I stared at her. She didn't know. Not yet. I took a slow sip of water, placed the glass down, and finally spoke. We need to talk. Olivia froze for half a second. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it, the slight hesitation, the flicker of something behind her eyes. Then she smiled, tilting her head like she had no idea what I was talking about. What's up? I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. She let out a soft chuckle. Why are you being so serious? Sit, I repeated, my voice steady. Something in my tone must have told her I wasn't playing games because her smile faded. She pulled out the chair and sat down, crossing her arms. Okay, what's going on? I studied her for a moment, letting the silence stretch. Letting her feel the weight of it. Then I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the table. Press play. She glanced down at the screen. At first, she didn't react. Then, as realization set in, her face paled. The video was from earlier that day. Olivia stepping out of her car in front of Aaron's house. Olivia kissing him as he pulled her inside. The timestamp in the corner confirmed what I already knew. She had been there when she was supposed to be at work. Her hands stayed still, but I saw the way her throat tightened. Keep watching, I said. She hesitated, then swiped to the next video. A different location. The hotel. Olivia walking into a room, a different man, Sean, holding the door open for her. She didn't press play. Instead, she set the phone down carefully, her fingers barely touching it. Then she looked at me, her face carefully blank. I can explain. I let out a slow breath, leaning back. Go ahead. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time since this all started, she was the one at a loss. I waited, arms crossed, watching her scramble for something, anything, that could make this disappear. Finally, she exhaled, shaking her head. It's not what it looks like. A humorless laugh escaped me. Really? Because it looks like you've been cheating on me with 2 different men for months. She rubbed her temples. Matt, please, just. How long? I cut in. She hesitated. How long? Her lips pressed into a tight line. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, almost a year. The words hit me harder than I expected, even though I had known the truth. A year. 12 months of lying to my face. 12 months of coming home to me after them. I clenched my jaw, forcing the anger down. I wouldn't let her see me break. You had every opportunity to end this, I said, my voice eerily calm. But instead, you lied. Over and over. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I shook my head. You don't get to say that. Silence stretched between us. Then she reached for my hand. I pulled away. The pain in her eyes was real, but it wasn't because she was sorry. It was because she had gotten caught. I'm filing for divorce, I said, standing up. The papers will be ready soon. She shot up from her chair. Wait, Matt, please, we can work through this. I turned to her, feeling nothing but exhaustion. No, Olivia. You made sure we couldn't. Her lips trembled, but I didn't stay to watch. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and walked out the door, leaving her and every lie she had ever told behind. I drove without a destination, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. The reality of it all was sinking in, not just the betrayal, but the finality of my decision. This was it. There was no going back. After about 20 minutes, I pulled into a parking lot and just sat there, staring at the dashboard. My phone buzzed. Olivia, please, Matt, can we talk? Just come home. I need to explain. I let out a slow breath, then put my phone on silent. There was nothing left to say. A few minutes later, another text came in. Dawson, everything good? I exhaled, rubbing my temples. Yeah. It's done. Dawson, she lose it? Asterisk she tried to talk her way out of it, but I didn't let her. There was a pause. Then. Dawson, smart. Don't let her guilt you. She'll say anything to get control back. I already knew that. I had seen it in her eyes before I walked out. She wasn't upset because she lost me. She was upset because she lost her safety net. I glanced at the time. Calloway would be drawing up the divorce papers soon. I had already secured my finances, locked down my assets, and had all the proof I needed. Olivia wouldn't be able to manipulate her way out of this. But there was still one thing left to do. I scrolled through my contacts and hit call. After 2 rings, my brother picked up. Hey, man. What's up? I took a deep breath. You got a spare room? He hesitated. You okay? I swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel. I just need a place to stay for a little while. He didn't ask any more questions. Of course. Come over whenever. I nodded to myself. Thanks. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally in control again. I put the car in drive and headed toward a new beginning. The drive to my brother's house felt surreal, like I was leaving behind not just a place, but a whole life. The weight of everything that had happened settled deep in my chest, but underneath it, there was something else. Relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't trapped in a web of lies. I wasn't spending every second doubting myself, wondering if I was paranoid or overreacting. I knew the truth now, and I had made my choice. By the time I pulled into my brother's driveway, the tension in my shoulders had eased just a little. He was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. As soon as I stepped out of the car, he took one look at me and nodded. Come inside. That first night away from Olivia, I barely slept. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything. The good years. The slow unraveling. The moment I confronted her. She had sent more messages. Olivia, I'm so sorry. Please, just talk to me. Olivia, I don't want to lose you. Can't we fix this? Olivia, I messed up, but we're worth saving, aren't we? I never responded. Because no, we weren't. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, lawyer meetings, and finalizing the divorce. Olivia tried to fight it at first, tried to spin the narrative, to make me feel like I was giving up too soon. But I had the evidence. The photos. The videos. The facts. In the end, she had no choice but to sign the papers. And just like that, it was over. Months later, I got a message from Olivia's mother. It was unexpected, and I almost ignored it. But something told me to open it. Olivia's mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I thought you should know. Olivia isn't doing well. She tested positive for HIV. My stomach dropped. I reread the message 3 times, making sure I wasn't misunderstanding. HIV. From who? Aaron? Sean? Someone else? I didn't know. And I didn't want to know. Olivia's mom, she's asking about you. She wants to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned my phone off. Whatever was happening to Olivia now, whatever consequences she was facing, I wasn't part of it anymore. She had made her choices. And I had made mine. It took a long time to heal. There were nights I felt angry, nights I felt numb. But slowly, I rebuilt. And one day, I woke up and realized I didn't think about her anymore. I was free. I had survived. And I was finally moving on.